Good morning. Hope you had a pleasant weekend. I had a particularly good one, and I'll doubtless ramble on while I'm working here this morning. This morning was really pleasant. It's the Leonid meteor showers, and this morning I saw 3 shooting stars, which is great. The Leonids apparently are known for their long tails, so they leave nice long streaks in the southern sky. It's very nice to see. So that was nice this morning. Let's see if we can carry on the pleasantness with some work here over the next hour or so. So what you see before you is the Mesolithic period, as much as I've gotten built of it at any rate, and there's a mixture of natural environment and human-made environment here. And the point for this is to try to get all of this prepped for working with the time travel system. So we had big success last week, finally getting the actual landscape itself, just the ground, working with the time travel system, and that's significant because I think we won't have quite such a difficult time with these other elements here in front of us. But it's going to take a little while. It's going to take some doing to work on. Hopefully I'm not going to have to stick every single tree into the system. Hopefully a lot of it's already there. So just to describe what we're looking at here, we are looking at a little tiny lake, which for some reason, or pond, which for some reason I keep calling a tarn. Looking at this little tiny pond here, this little pond's right at the edge of a hilltop. It's kind of where a spring maybe is coming out, bubbling up to the surface here. I know, it's strange to have a pond on a hilltop, but let's say it's marshy here everywhere. Anyway, going on, so there's this, and this becomes a significant feature for the human occupation of the site later on. So this is the Mesolithic period, right after the end of the last ice age. Let's call this the late Mesolithic. And there's some human habitation on this site. So we can see this thing standing here, which is a figure, a large piece of wood that's been carved into some basic human facial figures. It's called the Shigir idol. That's what it's based off of, which is a real Mesolithic era wood carving found in Russia? I can't remember now. Once again, showing off my horrible archaeology credentials. Anyway, I thought I'd base it on this. They're associated with boggy, marshy areas as well, but that may just be an accident of the preservation conditions. And maybe they were more widespread. But anyway, I've got this one set here by the tarn. And then up on top of the hill, there's some posts, just some tall posts set in the ground, and then there's there's 3 of these platforms, which we might be able to show you in some more detail here. So 3 platforms here. 1, 2, and the third is just posts. And some rocks, some big boulders, and these stay as fixed marks throughout much of the rest of this landscape's history. Got too close there. And on top of this platform is a skeleton. A disarticulated skeleton. So this is what would be called a sky burial. So we do have some human alteration of this landscape, which is pretty exciting. There's some other things you might notice here. You might notice that the trees and the bushes, all these little green blobs in the space, the trees and the bushes right now go from brightly lit to really dark on the non-sunny sides, essentially. And as we zoom in, you'll notice that shading becomes a little more subtle right there. You see there's a pop in on the bushes, and then the trees pop in, most of them, a little bit later. There's an LOD, a level of detail system occurring here, which is swapping between full 3D objects for the trees and then an imposter system. So I bought the Amplify Imposters system, which is really a fantastic LOD helpful system that creates more than just billboard LODs for you. It creates these imposters and bakes them, but the baking seems a little harsh, or the lighting seems a little harsh, so I've got to dig into why that's happening, because I really don't like these harsh shadows And also, I'm not quite getting my pop-in working well enough. It goes to imposters too soon. Like, a scene of this size is probably fine for the computer to handle, so I need to kind of work on that as well at some point. So there's a lot to work on. These might actually also be somehow GPU instanced as well. Another asset I bought, I tried to make a kind of GPU instancing system, and I did once, but it's wobbly. So a far more robust one is one that I didn't make, and that's called GPU Instancer, which again is a really, really clever system. I just haven't got the subtleties of it down to make it really do a lot of good work for me. So that's everything that's going on here. There's a couple things I want to do. Eventually, I want to get the shadows working at a further distance. Right now the shadows work close up, but then they die pretty quickly, and it makes these features look like they're just hovering on the ground. So I want to get that working. A few other things. Over the weekend I made a change to the skybox. The skybox used to be rendered by its own camera, and now it's being rendered by all cameras, because there's something like 5 cameras in the scene right now. And as I'm trying to move this scene over to the Unity 2020 and its render pipelines, I'm trying to see if I can squeeze this scene into the universal render pipeline and make it look as good. That requires a lot of work. Like, I have to rebuild my shaders, and I have to rethink some of my systems completely. Like, the time travel system just simply may not work. So having to do all of that sort of stuff, I'm trying to minimize my cameras, because there's camera stacking system in 2020. It seems a little bit limited. It's not like the kind of free camera stacking system you get in 2019.2 and earlier. And anytime I can eliminate cameras, I provide quite a bit of graphical efficiency. So that's the sort of stuff we have going on this morning. Lots going on, but what I really want to do is try to load all of this stuff into some kind of into the time travel system. So I've got all of the Mesolithic period turned on, and that's what we're going to work with. If we can get the Mesolithic going, we can probably get the other periods going between now and the end of play on Wednesday, and by Friday we may have another screenshot Saturday sort of thing to share. There's a lot of talking. There'll be less talking and more clicking and dragging this morning after this. So the first thing I want to do is I want to actually try to group this by period now. So I'm going to create a null in the scene, an empty object. We'll throw it in 0 in the world. It doesn't really matter where this object lives. And this object's living up here. Let's bring it into our active scene. Let's dump it right underneath the all tiles nulls. And let's give it a name. Let's just call it Mesolithic. Why not? Okay. So not the entire Mesolithic period is going to be completely governed by this child, because this parent, because we have the tiles nulls governing the time travel visibility of the actual landscape itself. But let's organize the rest of the period. Let's organize the rest of the period into this Mesolithic one, just to keep it clear. So let's grab all of these. Those are all Mesolithic, and dump them into the Mesolithic. There we go. Looks like our tree leaf shader is having a good deal of fun right now. You can see it all kind of moving around a bit. It's because I had them all selected. Let me see if there's anything else I'm missing from this period. No, the rest is the Iron Age and the Roman. I'll organize those at a later point. Let's just focus on the Mesolithic. Oh yes, I'm going to just jump into the shadows. Yeah, that sounds silly. I'm just going to jump into the rendering system for just a moment here. You can see our background quad. Our sky dome isn't a dome, and it's not a sky box either. It is actually just one quad with a shader on it that I built that lerps between some 4-pixel images, which are these colors, and it does these colors by time of day. So when we get the system running, this runs the background gradients that we see. So that's nice, and probably something I'm going to have to rebuild. But anyway, you can see that it's now sitting right there underneath the rest of the camera system, which is great. So I've got no skybox, which is really, really nice. Let me just take a look around here. Shadows may be a universal setting. I can't remember. I need to look into this a little bit more. Yeah. Let's just go and look in here. It's been a long time since I played with the settings. It's not going to be working. Well, we've got the cascaded shadows and all this kind of stuff going on here. I'll look into that a little bit later. I thought it was just going to be a setting on the camera, but it's not. Which is fine. Okay, let's move forward. The shadows aren't that big a deal. So we'll put that scene away for now. All right. So like we had with the landscape, where we had the we had one big manager object. So let's look at this, the all tiles null. Each tile is just a null that has nothing under it. It's just running the script, the soil info script. So each block of soil, each tile of the landscape has one of these scripts running on it. The key things that this script does: first, it gives an end date and a start date for each block. So each block is like a container, and each block has a lifespan. So it gives us the start and the end date of each block. The second thing that's really, really important that it does is that it has this soil and other times. And this is an array of objects which are called per period occupiers, PPOs. And they're like boxes as well. And each one of these boxes has a start date and an end date. And it also has a game object, an actual object that you see in the scene that it can turn on or off depending on the time period. And so that's what each one of these tiles does. And that's how the time travel system works. This soil info script has its counterpart in a number of other scripts running in the game. There's one called the general object info, but there's also a number of other ones depending on the specialized nature of each kind of object in the scene. So I want to see if I've got a general object info script running on some of these. None of this stuff here in the scene right now is really player interactable, not even this collapsed platform here. At one point maybe it would be nice to kind of rebuild this collapsed platform, but right now it's not. Right now it's simply a diorama that the player can see and drive around and explore. I haven't gotten into interactivity for this period in this region yet. So most of these should just have the kind of general or generic object info script on them, which will be doing the same thing as this soil info script for each tile. So there seems to be in this game two different types of objects as far as working their visibility out in each time period. There are one-off objects, which just appear in one period or two periods and no other. They don't have like multiple configurations per period. They're just one object, they don't change. And then for everything else where there's an object or part in space that's occupied by something and that can change throughout the periods, those are like containers. So there's objects and then there's containers that can contain those objects. And like the soil info tiles, those were containers. There's the general object and then there's bigger types of objects. So most of these objects that you see in this part of the scene should just be general. So I'm just going to go through the Mesolithic list here and take a look and see what we've got that's governing the time travel on each one of these things. So we're going to look at the vegetation first because that's the first in the list. So we've got a null object here, which is all of the cloned bushes in the landscape. And then so these are bushes which are just placed semi-randomly in Cinema 4D, and they're all of these guys, so if we turn them off, you'll see them disappear. I still got bushes all around the little pond. Those were all placed manually, so that's why we've got 2 bushes objects. There's nothing on their parent script, but each bush probably should have something going on it. So each bush does right now. It has the amplify imposters and the LOD group scripts. This changes their level of detail where they fade in and out. And this has got the amplify imposters, which are our actual imposter systems going here. And that's pretty nice. We'll leave those 2 scripts going. I ought to adjust this LOD system. And then it's got this veg visibility script. So each bit of vegetation in the landscape has a script on it that watches where the current camera is, and when the camera gets within a certain distance, it scales the piece of vegetation. It scales it into existence or out of existence. So this is kind of just a transition to try to keep things efficient. It probably makes things less efficient. So these don't have any particular object going in them right now. So I think I'm going to try to stick some sort of general object manager on their parent rather than on each individual object. So I just need to figure out which one of my numerous scripts is going to serve the purpose here. So is the general object info going to do the trick for us? So I'm just going to take a scroll through my long list of scripts. Most of these are experiments, but some of them actually work. We're just going to see if one of them can be bent to our will. Like even the soil manager script, the soil info script would probably be ideal for this. So let's keep looking. Well, all these different behavior scripts and general object info. Let's see if general object info will do the trick. Okay, general object info. It's got per period occupiers. That's excellent. It's got a set children layers script. That is also excellent. It's got a start date and an end date. This also has a little bit more information in it than we need, like a user build date. This is for an object that is placed by the user, and that's whether this is occupied is whether the user has actually interacted with it at this time. This may be more than we really need. The soil info may be the best, even though it's not soil. So one thing when it comes to finishing this prototype or this demo, the next step after that is to actually get into a production version of this as we fill out the rest of the game. And that I have a lot of redundancy going on in different scripts, and I'm going to try to rationalize that or streamline that quite a bit. Soil info has a start date, an end date, and a set children layers object. I think that's all we need. Let me just dig into that script. We saw it last week. What I wanted to do, when it says set children layers, I want an option which allows me to turn on and off the children as well. So that's the big thing. So let's take a look and see what that's going to give us here. Because we don't really need any per period occupiers on this. It's just a one-off object. So none of this process time layers is going to work, but it's only going to work for the outer object. So really what I'm looking at is this set children layers. So let's find all the references in the script to that. Right, so all this is doing is doing exactly what it says, which is setting the children layers. What I really want to do, well, no, that's not true. So if the game object is in neither, this is fine. This is exactly what we want. So if the game object, which would be this object we're talking about here, the object that the soil info script is attached to, if this object exists in neither the current time period nor the target time period that we're traveling to, it turns itself off. When it turns itself off, it'll turn off everything. It'll turn off everything that sits underneath it. That's fine. We also need, but if we have the set children layers object on, the time travel and visibility systems operated through a layer-based system, and this will change all of the layer tags for all of the children underneath this as well, all 50 of them, which is also what we need because we need to change the visibility. Each end of the wormhole is governed by its own camera, and the camera can only see what's set up on the layers. So that's great. And soil and other times, these are the per period occupiers. It doesn't need to be set. There are no other per period occupiers for this object. I suppose I could set all of the bushes up to one object. Would be an interesting thing to do, just like we did with the tiles. So that's really good. So let's look at the start date and the end date that we gave for the Mesolithic tiles, because I can't remember. So the Mesolithic objects get a negative 12,000 to negative 8,000. Okay, that's all we need. So now all these bushes should be ready for time travel, which is great. And I should be able to copy this across to almost all of my other vegetation objects, and most of my other objects in the scene too, which is great. So let's just copy this whole component. Let's move it down here to the bushes that go around the little lake. There they are. Make sure there's nothing else going on. Nope, they're just exactly the same as the previous. So they should also be able to get this. Marvelous. The entire birch forest. All like 200 trees. They too should just be able to get this one script with the exact same settings. Just wanted to make sure that set children layers was actually on. Okay. This is working very well. I think that soil info script's ending up being the thing we need. It's quite general in its applications. These are just prefabs. I'm not even certain why I have them in the scene at this time, but they don't need anything. They're never visible. Okay, all the tufts of grass. There's lots of tufts of grass. All these little things sticking up here just to provide some visual relief. I think I need to fix them at some point. There's a lot of them. They all have the veg visibility as well. They all have LOD groups, but they're not amplify imposters. I might at some point take each cluster of grass and I may cluster them according to the landscape tile they're on, and that would reduce the number of game objects in the scene, which would be great. It's always good to have as few game objects as you can get away with in the scene. Some more grass tufts, the reeds. I love these reeds. All these cattails. They get the same thing. I mean, in some way, I could just take the whole Mesolithic period and put the soil info script on the whole dang thing. that wouldn't give me particular control, but because this is purely for time travel, maybe that's what we work on. I may experiment with that off stream. Oops. So we come the rocks and the trees around the little pond. And some more grass. Okay. The Shigir idol. Does that need anything other than the same treatment at this time? I don't think it does. The exact same thing. Okay, so this Mesotarn semi-uniques. These are all the kind of unique objects that are just placed uniquely in the scene other than the Shigir idol. And that water surface should have a different type of shader on it, but I think it was really kind of expensive and slowing down the viewport, because that's my really lovely water shader. So there's the cemetery. Again, none of these objects have anything in particular going on other than just skeleton. But they really don't need anything else to them, so the whole thing can get the same behavior as the soil. So the whole Mesolithic period basically does very little. There will eventually be a few objects to pick up here. Well, one object, maybe, to pick up here, and a few other little things going on, but right now it's pretty much just a diorama. We'll add more in as the game grows and the narrative grows. But so far, really, that's that. We might jump through all the periods and just keep adding these things. Okay, let's keep trying. So let's go up to the Neolithic. That's going to go live right here underneath the Mesolithic. I'm going to call this set it at 0 in the world. The default layer should be fine for this. That might be the problem. Well, what I'm kind of wondering about the layering here is that the soil info script sets the layers for all of the children at time travel, at least. And that's going to be a problem. Because the way the current camera system works, where it actually creates on the fly cross sections through all of these objects, it works based on a layer system as well. So one layer system does not necessarily work for each object, because that depends on where the cameras are. So we may experience some strange behavior, and I may need to alter this a little bit. But for now, let's go turn off all of the Mesolithic. Ooh, we got rid of everything. It's not entirely what I wanted. That's because the Mesolithic landscape is sitting outside of this object. Well, that's okay. All right. Let's go find... I guess the only thing we have going right now in the Neolithic is that. Right, the Mesolithic, or the Neolithic, is different. It needs -7999 to -2000. That's the dates for that. All right, that one's working. I don't believe I had anything else going on in the Neolithic. Iron Age has some stuff going on. Here we go. Yeah. Let's go find our Iron Age objects. Here comes the planks for the well. There's our well. Some more rocks. The palisades, interestingly, are a per tile sort of thing. And our barrow is a little bit more spread out and broken down now. We've got some trees. I don't know where they are. Some more boulders. We need our roundhouses. There we go. Oh, whoops. System's taking its time to think about those, and I just turned it off, turned it back on again. What am I doing? Why is this causing the beach ball of death? Why is this so difficult to work with? Wonder what's up. Yeah. There we go. There they are. Marvelous. Okay, all of these objects. Neo-topsoil. Well, no, the neo-topsoil could go in the Neolithic period. And the Neolithic dirt tiles are different. Iron Age fill. Roundhouses. All of the rest of these objects can all go into my Iron Age null. And the topsoil and the fill can stay out of this collection, but the rest of them can get the soil script. -2000 to 100. Here we go. Oh, 100. Actual 100. Okay. I'm looking at the years here, and it's not -200 in date, it's the year 100. 80 now. Okay. Because again, I haven't set up any user interaction. As I set up user interaction in here, we'll get a little bit fancier on the scripts, but right now that soil info script is doing us a lot of good. just realized that that Iron Age null is not at 0. Oh well, it doesn't matter. What is it at? Yeah, the others are at 0. I don't think it's going to matter. Here comes the Roman one. There's our temple tomb. Here's the little Romano-Celtic temple. Rest of the cemetery. Here's our nice stone well. Everything else, that's all the Roman stuff. The Roman fill and topsoil also goes in there. And everything gets this soil info script again. Definitely going to have to change this one. So 101 to, what do we go to, 500 on this one? How long does my Roman period last? Yeah, 500. Okay. What do I have left? The kind of Anglo-Saxon period left. So let's make one more game object. Let's call it Anglo-Saxon. Change it to 0, 0, 0. Let's be tidy. What do we say our Anglo-Saxon period is here? We don't. We never got up to that period. All right. Fair enough. In fact, we may not even have the landscape of that. All we've got is the church anyway. Yep. That's all we have loaded in. Now the church is going to be interactable, but we don't have any of that built up yet. So let's just stick the soil info script on this one again as well. And this one's going to go from 501 to 1065. We'll let the Norman period start with 1066. We have to. Okay, now let's turn on all of this. It'll be a glorious mess. Look at that. All periods all at once. I love it. Yeah, that one's great. I love it. Everything all together. What a mess. Well, let's turn everything off except for the Roman period. And everything that has a soil info script on it needs to stay on. But its child objects can turn off. I think that's the way it's going to work. The real issue is whether if these are nulls or not. I don't know. The Roman well should just stay off, so we'll see if that ever comes back on. That'll be something to work out. Unfortunately, each one of the roundhouses is its own object. So we'll see if the Iron Age well ever comes back on as well. Okay. So I guess that goes for all of the individual trees as well. They all need to stay on or off. I'm not entirely certain whether they do or not. So here's a little thing. Even if a script is turned off, is disabled in the inspector, if that script is set up as part of a messaging system, any message sent around the system, even if the script is disabled, the script will pick up on and execute if it receives a message that it's listening for. I'm not entirely certain if that's also true if the script is on a game object, which happens to be deactivated. That'll be something that'll be interesting to see. We'll have to test that here. Okay, we're back to just the Mesolithic period now. All right, let's save all of this progress that we've made. May have messed it all up. Who knows? Probably have messed it up because everything I always do breaks everything. And then we fix it very slowly. Okay. Well, moment of truth here. Fingers crossed. We may just kill the whole system. I may have to hard restart it. Who knows? Let's find out. Oh, that's right. And I've got the time travel cheater as well, where I can just merrily skip through the system. That's great too. I don't have to load the save game, which is really nice. Okay, so all those trees disappeared because they're outside. There's an invisible box that's kind of like the camera's domain, and all those other bushes and trees and things are sitting outside of it. Okay, so we got the breeze gently blowing the trees, the leaves flickering away. Very nice. Now let's see what happens if there's our idle. Let's see what happens now if we go forward or backward in time. Okay, fingers crossed. Here we go. All right. I'm not sure what's going to happen here. I don't really see much going on is my problem. I see the other landscape, but I don't see the barrow. And the trees didn't turn off either. All right. Well, there's my answer. The system's not working. I mean, it turned off... Okay, so it did. It turned off some things. It turned off the Shigir idol. It turned off all of the human-made objects. It might have turned off some of the boulders. Yeah, it turned off all of those. It did not turn off the vegetation. Okay, that's interesting. Why did that happen? We're going to have to dig into this a little bit more. Okay, so it didn't turn off these trees and bushes around here. I mean, there should be some trees and bushes around here still, because I think that's still a kind of pond by the Neolithic period. But it shouldn't be these trees and bushes. They should, eventually I'll have to put them in and they should change. So let's just take a look and see what's going on with these. And it wasn't the landscape ones, it was the ones just around the tarn. it's the veg visibility camera messing with everything else. Let's take a look. Let's see what that script's doing. Okay. So this is an expensive script because a lot of stuff's running in the update, but only if the camera is moving. What this does is this determines whether this transform is sitting inside the bounds of the camera clipping box. And is turning on and off mesh renderers and scaling it in and out. That's all it's doing. Let's look at our trees. Trees around the tarns here. Where is that? There we go. Those are the trees. Why I wanted to look at the trees is, okay, it's got the mesh renderers already set up on it. Okay, that's good. It's not finding those. Alright, well, let's take a look. Ah, it's in the vegetation layer. That might be the problem. Yep. So all the vegetation sits on its own layer. Why? I don't know. What happens if I change that? Let's just work on these trees here. Surely I don't have a camera working on the vegetation layer. So let's set these into the default layer. Okay. Now when we press time travel, what happens? Yeah, I'm not quite sure why I've got the vegetation in its own layer. I'm sure it has some point. Okay. There we go. We can see a nice of human and nature placed objects here. Let's time travel. Marvelous. Okay. So the trees are still there. Trees, you should not be there. Trees, you're still in the default layer. That's silly. Okay. Let's keep working on this. In fact, it doesn't actually matter if they're in the default layer or not. We'll put them back in vegetation. Because their layer should be controlled by this soil info script. Okay. Let's go look at that soil info script again and see if it's only looking for, if it's not even looking for the default layer, which is layer 9, I believe. There's the soil info script. Okay, here's where we process the layers. If the game object is in layer 9, nope, that's the layer we're looking at. That's very curious. Okay, so we've got an issue with vegetation. And also, why wasn't my barrow showing up? Maybe because I never turned everything on. Okay, here comes a test. So remember what I said, that scripts that are disabled but that are listening for messages, they pick up those messages even if they're disabled, but I wasn't sure if they pick up the messages if they're on a disabled game object or an inactive game object. Okay, here's what we're going to test now. I'm going to test and see. I've just turned off my Neolithic Barrow parent object, and we'll see if the soil info script still picks up on the whole time travel thing. Well, here, let's test it first. Let's turn it on, but let's turn off its children. And let's watch the default, let's watch the layer of this as we time travel. It should turn into time B when we hit time travel. It's on default now. Let's let this spin away. Okay, it is on default. Okay. All right, so do a little time travel. It still stayed on default. Well, that's part of the problem. It's not moved. But these have moved. All right. Well, let's dig into it. So the soil info script is not behaving as I want it to. So let's go see what it's actually doing and what I'm missing. There's just a bit of logic that I'm missing here. So we're in the soil info script. So let's just take a look, step through the script, see what's going on. What am I moving through to? Let's go look at my time travel cheater. Oh, it's not on that one. My time travel cheater lives down here on the timeline system. Negative 3,000. It would be, so I go from 10,500 to 3,000 in my dates when I'm jumping through time, cheating my way through time. What date did I set my Neolithic round barrow? No, it's falling. If I'm going to negative 3,000, that barrow should exist from 8,000 to 2,000. So it should be there. And this is certainly working on the topsoil tiles. Okay. Okay, so what next? I suppose the big thing is that it's no, it should have set its own time period. If the object exists in the target period, which it does. Noisy bird outside my window this morning. If that exists in the target period, which it does, then it sends itself here into so hold on, so it's determining whether it exists in the target period, and it does. If it's in the target period or in the current period. It's not processed. Okay, I understand now. It's not sending itself to be processed by the layers because it doesn't have a mesh renderer on it. That's what's going on. needs to process its layers. Yes, it does. Okay. So that needs to go down here. That needs to be commented out. So it's never processed. It's never setting its own layer. It's only setting the layers on its per period occupiers. It's never setting its own layer. That's the problem. Okay. We may need to tell it to process its layers up here as well, but I'm not 100% certain. So let's let it compile. It's busy down there in the corner compiling. There, it's finished. All right, now let's watch this layer on the barrow object. Let's let it fire up. There we go. Visibility manager's working. That's great. Time travel. Oh, it's still not showing up, but it is in time B. Good, okay. Good, we're getting there. One step at a time. Let's solve this and then we'll call it quits for the day. We'll call it a successful day. So it did process its own time. So that's really good. Let's say, let's go back down here where there's that check mark on if it's set children layers for every child in the game object. Okay, so it sets its layer. And let's do a check which may not be necessary. And if the game object is, let's see, so if this game object, I don't use active self very often, so I don't know what it is. If it's a bool, it's a get set and it's a bool. Okay. If it is currently true, so if it's currently activated in the hierarchy, then the transform get child I game object dot set active true. Okay, this is going to create a weird effect, but let's just see if this works for us for now. I may just get rid of this little sub loop later on. But let's just see. Let's just see if we can get the basics working right now. Okay, time travel. Aha, there it is. There's our, look at that. Also, the other cool thing we got doing, because I changed the skybox, the way it's rendered, now the skybox renders through our time travel portal, so the sky doesn't smudge. I really like that the ambient occlusion script is putting ghosts of different time periods into the portal. I think that's a really cool effect, and I'm afraid it's going to disappear when we move over to 2020. But I really like that effect. But anyway, that's great. Look at that. That's cool, but the trees are still there. So what's up with that? We gotta fix that. But there we go. We're jumping between the two time periods now. Excellent. Okay. One last thing to test. Okay, so it turned on all of these. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn on all the child objects under the round barrow. And then I'm going to turn the parent object to the round barrow off. And we are going to see if the soil info script on a deactivated object is still going to pick up on the messages that are sent to it when it's time traveling. So let's see what happens here. All right, let's travel. Nope, it didn't pick up on it. This should have changed to time B, and when looking through the portal, we should have seen the barrow, and we don't. So, and deactivated script on an activated object. So a disabled script on an activated object will still pick up on messages sent to it. But if the object itself is deactivated, the scripts on it will not pick up, which makes sense. So we're going to have to add some checks and things like that into this. And I think why I'm saying all of this is because I can start out this game like in the Mesolithic period, and I can have the parent object activated, but since it doesn't have any geometry on it, it's fine, it just hangs out. And then when I travel back to the Neolithic period, that's fantastic. It turns its child objects on, we jump back in time, everything's great. But when I start jumping around in time, at some point, all of these, for example on this barrow, all of its child objects, the actual geometry, is going to stay on, and it's going to stay on no matter what time period we're in. So I've got to come up with a way at the beginning of the game for it to essentially do a time travel check, and for all of these objects to look at themselves and say, hey, I'm not currently active. So I need to work on that. That's fine. I can work on that. We can handle that. It's good to know what sort of checks we need to do. Still not sure why the vegetation isn't jumping into different period. Why it's not turning itself on and off. We'll take a look at that. But for now, we're part of the way there. And tomorrow I'll take a look at some of these errors and problems, and hopefully I'll have it fixed by Wednesday. But for now, I think that's a good place to stop. So we've done quite a lot of work, and I'm pleased we've got some stuff working. So until Wednesday morning, I hope you have a great start to your week, and we'll see you then. Bye.